Question orale. Oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Documents published today reveal that senior management at the Bank of Canada is worried about creating false expectations about interest rates. Who created these false hopes? The finance minister, who said 2 months ago that we had won the fight against inflation. But since she made that statement, inflation has risen 43%. It's higher in Canada than it is in the United States. And there could be further interest hikes on Canadians who are already the most in debt in the G7. Will they stop their inflationary deficit so we can bring down interest rates and save Canadians? The Honourable Innovation Minister.
No listen from these Conservatives, Mr. Speaker. Last time that the Conservative leader gave advice to Canadians, he advised them to buy crypto, Mr. Speaker. The last piece of advice that Canadians will take is from this leader who talks about interest rate, Mr. Speaker. Today we introduced a bill to tackle cost of living in this country, to tackle issues with respect to housing, Mr. Speaker. Canadians know we have their back. We'll fight for them at every step of the way.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
It's a way the mice will play. How many others are going to be auditioning for the Prime Minister's job up there? It's okay, they won't be there long regardless. Thank you. But in the meantime, we've got a forthcoming crisis this government helped create. Their inflationary deficits mean that the cost of living is rising faster here than in the United States. Inflation is up 43% in 2 months, and this after the finance minister said it was gone. Why won't they get rid of their inflationary deficits and taxes so Canadians can eat, heat, and house themselves?
The Honourable Minister for Public Services, the Treasury Board.
Across the aisle, our government actually has a plan to support Canadians. Whether it's 11 million Canadians with the grocery rebate, whether it is 4.2 million Canadians with the workers' benefit, Mr. Speaker, or whether it is 6 million Canadians with indexing old age security, Mr. Speaker, unlike the Conservatives, our government actually has a plan, and every step of the way, we will focus on Canadians and what they need during this economic time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Leader of the Opposition.
Well, judging by the applause level, it looks like the fellow from Shawinigan has a bit of a lead in the leadership race. And unfortunately, Canada has a lead in higher inflation than the United States of America. Even the Bank of Canada's Governing Council expressed concern that it was giving false hope about interest rates. The recent inflation report that came out shows that the bank may again have to raise rates on the Canadian people who are the most indebted in all of the G7. Will this government reverse its inflationary deficits before rates rise and bankrupt Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Speaker, I may give the Leader of the Opposition a hate for making jokes, but when it comes to the economy, it's something different, and Canadians know that, Mr. Speaker. What the Conservatives should look at is what we did today, Mr. Speaker. We talked and we introduced a bill that will make a difference in the lives of Canadians. That's what Canadians expect, Mr. Speaker. They don't expect that we make fun in this chamber. They expect us to work for Canadians. Today we introduced a bill that will make a difference in the lives of Canadians. And I enjoin all the members of this House to work with us, make them meaningful measures for Canadians so we can help people at the time of need.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, I do tell the occasional joke, Mr. Speaker, but none of my humor meets with the joke that is this government's economic plan. A joke that has given us the worst inflation in 40 years, doubled the national debt, doubled the rent, doubled mortgage payments, doubled the needed down payment for Canadians to get into a home, made it so that a Torontonian has to save 25 years for a down payment where they used to be able to pay off a mortgage in that time. Will they reverse their disastrous inflationary policies so that Canadians can finally eat, heat, and house themselves?
The Honourable Minister for Housing.
Speaker, it's fascinating that the honourable member, after a summer talking about housing, put forward a plan that tinkers around the edges, which experts have indicated demonstrate a lack of understanding of the urgency or scale of Canada's housing crisis. For example, we have advanced a measure that will get rid of GST on apartment construction. He's now made a commitment to put it back on for middle-class homes. Mr. Speaker, he has made a commitment to cut the program that is now changing the way that cities build homes in London, in Calgary, and will impact many cities across the country. We will advance policies that make a difference, not just hang something in the window and be a pretender like him.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, what my plan on the GST does is make sure we don't give tax breaks for $10 million penthouse apartments like that member is proposing to do. We want the builders who qualify for it to have affordable apartment rentals so that Canadians can actually live in them. God forbid. The limousine Liberals want all the money to go to the penthouse apartments. As for his program, $4 billion, and a year and a half later, it hasn't built a single solitary house, and it's only promised 2,000 homes, of which you'd need 1,500 of those announcements to get to the number we need. Why won't they get out of the way so we can build?
The Honourable Minister of Housing.
If the honourable member is concerned about building affordable homes, he should talk to the people who advocate for the building of affordable homes. They are telling us to advance a full GST measure, not a half measure, because that is what's going to get homes built in this country. He plans to cut the Housing Accelerator Fund, which is changing the way that cities build homes. He is literally cutting money that's going to build homes and planning to tax the people who build them. If he can't see that that don't work, he should go back to his image consultant and tell them that he needs to start wearing glasses again.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker.
L'ordre.
Order.
Order. Order. Now, I want to remind both sides that pushing the envelope is one thing, but going over is another, and I'm hearing it from both sides. So I want everybody to take that into consideration when they're answering or asking the questions. The
Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, the Housing Minister admitted that there will be conditions for Quebec when it comes to the transfer of the $900 million, which should be unblocked and given to Quebec for building social housing. But social housing is not under federal jurisdiction. Is Ottawa telling those who are in distress, who can't pay their rent, who might become homeless, who are held hostage to the Liberals' desire to centralize everything through Ottawa? The Honourable Housing Minister. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the question. In fact, just last night I had a conversation with my Quebec counterpart. It was a productive and positive conversation. Together, we are working to help those who need more affordable housing.
With provinces and our partners at different levels of government to establish programs that are going to support vulnerable people, including in Quebec.
The member for Belleuil-Chambly. We are wasting time while people are suffering, Mr. Speaker. There is poverty, housing issues, there is homelessness. We know what the problems are. We are capable of funding social housing. We have the ability to help seniors who are struggling with the rising cost of living. Meanwhile, though, Mr. Speaker, Big Oil posted $200 billion in profits last year, and yet the government has no money for social housing, no money for seniors. Mr. Speaker, are the Liberals as compassionate as the Conservatives? The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources. As I said yesterday, we have eliminated fossil fuel subsidies. We are working with all sectors of the economy, including the oil sector. We are working with all sectors to ensure that our future will be clean and will also create good jobs for Canadians. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-La Petite Patrie. Mr. Speaker, The housing crisis is the result of Liberal and Conservative cuts to housing co-ops and social housing. Now, we're realizing that the measure to eliminate the GST on housing construction contains no definition of affordable housing. It's ridiculous. It's insulting, even. What planet are the Liberals living on? Housing is a fundamental, basic right. People's lives are at stake here. Can the Liberals put people before profits? Can they build 2 million social housing and co-op units? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for his question. I would like to remind him that, for the first time, the federal government implemented not only a national housing strategy, but for the first time named a commissioner to advocate for the right to housing, because on this side of the House, we feel that each and every Quebecer has the right to housing, has the right to a place to call home. That's why we have made historic investments to ensure that all Quebecers have this right.
So the Liberals finally listened to the NDP and tabled their housing plan to remove the GST from building new homes. But people in London are getting evicted by rich developers. Liberals and Conservatives have spent the last 30 years creating this housing crisis and have caused people in my riding, like the tenants of Webster Street, to be pushed out of their building so a corporate landlord can be even greedier. The Liberal plan does nothing to stop profiteering landlords from throwing people onto the street. So please, will this government steal another idea from the NDP and announce a housing acquisition fund so co-ops and nonprofits can keep people in their homes?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister for Housing.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for her question, and as I'm sure she knows by now, we had the opportunity to visit her community in the City of London, where I met with non-profit housing providers who are doing extraordinary work on the ground to support people, to prevent them from falling into homelessness. But she may have also seen that we worked closely with the City and Council under Mayor Josh Morgan's leadership to invest $74 million that's going to change the way that the City of London builds homes going forward. In the next few years, it will add thousands of homes to the supply in that city, which will drive down costs, make housing more affordable, and allow people to enjoy life in a complete community in the City of London, and we're proud of that work.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, after doubling the cost of housing in this country, the Prime Minister thought he would appoint someone to fix the mess he made, who was in charge of immigration when they put refugees on the streets and under bridges, when they had international students sold into prostitution and human trafficking. And he says that I need glasses. This is the same minister that lost 1 million people. He literally lost track of 1 million people that came into the country. Can the minister please tell us, glasses, binoculars, or otherwise, how you lose 1 million people?
The Honourable Minister for Immigration. I just want to tell the member for Spadina Fort York to be ready, just in case we have to go to the end of the line. The Honourable Minister, please go.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think you see how thin-skinned the Leader of the Opposition can get when he gets a piece of his own medicine.
That's right.
Look, international students are a credit to this country, Mr. Speaker. They are the future of this country, and they are an asset that is very lucrative, and we cannot let them down. Clearly, we need to work with provinces to make sure that they have proper housing, and we have to crack down on agents that are giving them false hope across the country. But let's not make this a partisan issue. Thank you.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the question was how you lose 1 million people. And then how is it that the Prime Minister scours his entire front bench, and hopefully he even gave a little bit of attention to his beleaguered backbench when he was shuffling the cabinet, and the one guy that he could find to fix the doubling of housing costs that he incurred as Prime Minister was the guy who lost 1 million people. The guy who will go down in history in the Guinness Book of World Record of having lost more people than have ever been lost in the history of the world. How is it possible they couldn't find anyone better than that to put in charge of housing?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
focused on us. We're going to stay focused on Canadians. While the leader of the opposition is making personal attacks, we're going to continue to support the personal lives of Canadians, and whether that's helping them through tough times like COVID, whether it's helping them through difficult times right now with inflation, we are going to continue to be there for Canadians, and that will remain.
Sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing the Honourable Minister. I mean, let's try the other end of the list here. Spadina Fort York, if you don't mind, give me your question, and then we'll come back to the list and see if everything calms down a bit. The Honourable Member for Spadina Fort York.
Mr. Speaker, on June 9th, I asked the government if they were aware of an apartheid-era visa process at our High Commission in South Africa. The government said it takes racism seriously and has rolled out anti-racism training in visa offices, including in South Africa. But I recently met with the Canadian High Commissioner, Chris Cooter, in Pretoria, and astoundingly, he said he wasn't aware of any racism issues. Mr. Speaker, who am I to believe? The government? An IRCC committee report that specifically identified mission racism in Africa, or an out-of-touch High Commissioner?
Mr. for Immigration.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Clearly, our government institutions are subject to systemic racism. We should not deny that. But better than that, we need to act on it. It's why I've instructed my Deputy Minister to work with her team to make sure that we are addressing racism and systemic racism across the government, but particularly in Immigration and Refugee Canada. If you look at the statistics online with respect to African migration, then the statistics have gone up, but we need to do better, and we need to look at the way we process those things because we do need to have a discussion about race in this country.
Well, Member for Regina Capel.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this Prime Minister, it is crystal clear he's not worth the cost. His deficits are driving up inflation. Even his finance minister knows this. Just 1 year ago, she said that her goal was to, quote, not pour fuel on the fire of inflation. But then what did she do? She grabbed the jerry can and poured $60 billion of new spending on that dumpster fire. The result? Higher inflation, which means higher interest rates, which means Canadians will have bigger mortgage payments and may not be able to stay in their home. Time is running out. When will the government stop their inflationary deficits so Canadians can keep a roof over their head?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, what I heard from Canadians, what every member of our government heard from Canadians, is that they want lower rent and lower grocery food prices. Mr. Speaker, today we introduced legislation that will help do just that. The Affordable Homes and Groceries Act will remove the GST from the construction of rental housing, Mr. Speaker, in order to build more homes in this country faster. It also strengthens Canada's competition laws in order to help stabilize prices for all Canadians. Mr. Speaker, we are laser focused on the needs of Canadians, and we're responding substantively. What are the Conservatives doing?
Zero. The Honourable Member for Regina Capel.
The problem is, Mr. Speaker, is that their inflationary spending is evaporating any benefit that Canadians might hope for. The Prime Minister admitted in this House that any benefit that their programs might have provided Canadians were completely wiped out by higher inflation and higher interest rates. Former Liberal Finance Minister knows this. John Manley said, this is a bit like driving your car with one foot on the gas and the other on the brake generally. Not a good plan for controlling the direction of your vehicle, not a good plan for controlling the direction of the economy either. This reckless driving is forcing Canadians out of their homes and pushing food off their table. When will they stop the inflationary deficit so Canadians can stay in their homes?
The Honourable Minister.
Affordability, Mr. Speaker, just this week, up to $619 has arrived in Canadian families' bank accounts. That's $619 to help with groceries, school supplies, new sneakers. The Canada Child Benefit has helped lift literally hundreds of thousands of children out of poverty. We will continue to do all we can to support Canadian families. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de Charlebourg-Haute-Saint.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, this morning the media reported that Quebecers are the hardest hit by inflation in Canada. Inflation on housing is up 16.7%. The cost of mortgage interest has shot up by 37%, and the cost of gas is up 51.5%. The Prime Minister seems determined to worsen the situation by maintaining his inflationary policies and raising the tax on gas. Will the Prime Minister drop his inflationary policies to give Quebecers a break and avoid another surge of mortgage payments?
L'honorable Secrétaire parlementaire.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understand why the Conservatives have trouble connecting with Quebecers. It's because their austerity policies don't work for Quebecers. They want to slash EI. They want to cut our pensions for seniors. They want to cut subsidies for childcare. We gave Quebec $6 billion for childcare, and the Conservatives would slash that too. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, that is nonsense. Total nonsense. In my riding, people understand that the Liberals do everything all wrong. The Bloc Québécois and the Liberals know that the carbon tax increases costs and contributes to inflation. The Bloc claim to be the adults in the room, but they also believe that the children of Quebecers are the ones who will have to foot the bill. As we can see once again today in the media, voting for the Bloc is expensive. Can the Prime Minister confirm that he has no intention of listening to the Bloc and that he will abandon the idea of drastically increasing the tax on gas? The Honourable Innovation Minister. Mr. Speaker, I have the utmost respect for my colleague from Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. He mentioned the media. He's surely aware of our recent Competition Act and Excise Tax Act. We will deal with competition in Canada. It's the first reform in a long time. There will be more competition. We were also eliminating GST on housing, and we're also extending loans for small businesses. So if he's reading the news, that's the type of news that he should be reading, because that's the type of news that's going to help the people of his riding. The Honourable Member for Avignon, Lamitis, Matane, Matapédia. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister would undoubtedly had been better received at the World Petroleum Congress in Alberta than he was at the Climate Ambition Summit in New York. The Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations presented him for what he is, one of the world's leaders in the expansion of fossil fuels. While Quebec is heralded as a hero in the fight against climate change, Canada is portrayed as a zero, a climate hypocrite. When will this government start taking the fight against climate change seriously? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for her question. We are aware of the consequences of climate change. We see them everywhere in the country, and we know that we need to do more. I'd like to take advantage of this moment to highlight an announcement made yesterday that Canada will obtain its GHG reduction emissions goals by 2030. We are bringing down pollution, and we are creating good jobs in a clean economy. The Honourable Member for Avignon, Lamitis, Matane, Matapédia. Mr. Speaker, the Environment Minister, Mr. Bédunard himself, found a way to be the only one in New York devaluing Quebec's environmental policies. Can you believe that? If the government had invested as much in fighting climate change as it's invested in Trans Mountain, we might be able to take them seriously. But honestly, why don't they stick trees in the ground before sticking it to Quebec? Because Quebec, at least, takes climate change seriously. When will this government, for once, be part of the solution rather than part of the problem when it comes to the fight against climate change? The Honourable Heritage Minister. Mr. Speaker, here's the situation. We have decreased by 62 megatons GHG emissions since 2019. That is 1/4 of our goal for 2030. So yes, we do have more to accomplish. We will accomplish our goals in partnership with provinces and territories. We will meet our targets because we are committed to ensuring a better future for our children. The Honourable Member for Repentigny. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned world leaders that humanity has opened the gates of hell. And the big oil developers like Canada, well, they're sitting in the box office, counting and making money. We've often talked about the environment for future generations, but those days are over now. Forest fires, floods, marine heat waves, biodiversity is taking a hit. That's all happening now. We see it every day around the world. We need to change things now. What is the government waiting for to take the climate crisis seriously? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Environment Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank my colleague for her question. We are cutting subsidies to fossil fuels, and we are encouraging smart government investments which will increase Canada's competitiveness. We also announced in Budget 2023 our plan for a clean economy. It's a $120 billion plan to grow Canada's clean economy and create good-paying jobs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, a couple from Langley, British Columbia were interviewed who said their mortgage payments went up $2,700 a month to $6,300 a month. Now, the Liberal Finance Minister is trying to convince Canadians that her plan to bring down inflation is working. It is not. It just went up again. Now, after 8 years, the NDP Liberal government spending drove up inflation, which drove up mortgage interest costs 31%. This Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. When will the Prime Minister stop his inflationary deficit spending so Canadians can keep a roof over their head?
The Honourable Minister of Housing.
Mr. Speaker, I share my honourable colleague's concern about the real serious pain that families are feeling across this country. But let's not ignore the sources of some of these challenges. Global inflation as a result of the war in Ukraine, as a result of climate change and other global factors. We are going to support Canadians through these times, including by helping them with the cost of housing. One of the major initiatives that we launched last week is to remove federal tax on home building in Canada. This is the kind of thing that will add to Canada's national housing supply and reduce inflation when it comes to the cost of living for many Canadians. I hope the Conservatives will join us by advancing a full measure, not a half measure that tinkers around the edges.
The Honourable Member for Kelowna Great Lake Country.
Mr. Speaker, what's serious is that Canadians are seriously worried about losing their homes, and this government continues to take zero accountability. Now, it's also the former Liberal Finance Minister, John Manley, who said the NDP Liberal government's deficits press on the inflationary gas pedal, which forces the Bank of Canada to press harder on the brakes with higher interest rates. Now, he sounds like driving a car. This is, quote, not a good plan for controlling the direction of the economy. So after 8 years, Canadians are losing hope and they're hurting. When will this Liberal NDP government stop the inflationary spending so people won't lose their...
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Tourism.
Mr. Speaker, I agree with my colleague opposite that Canadians are hurting, and that's exactly why I don't understand why the Conservatives don't want to help Canadians. The legislation that we table today will help build more homes for Canadians right across the country, and that will lower rents and lower mortgages for all Canadians. Mr. Speaker, the legislation that we table today will also strengthen Canada's competition laws, which will help keep prices, like prices for groceries, lower in this country, Mr. Speaker. I certainly hope that the Conservatives will support this bill. Will they?
The Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil.
This is how bad it is. Last week, I met a senior named Don in my Barrie Innisfil office. He told me when he renews his mortgage, he'll be left with just $600 a month from his pension because of the increases in interest rates caused by this NDP Liberal government's inflationary spending. In fact, recent CMHC data shows 24% of people with mortgages are struggling to make their monthly payments, and it's getting worse. Don, like many seniors, now realize that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Will the Prime Minister finally stop his inflationary spending so Canadians can keep a roof over their head?
Good question. The Honourable Minister of Labour.
One of the first things you could do, Mr. Speaker, if you were to help seniors is make sure that the age of retirement where they receive OAS is 65 and not 67. We have increased OAS and helped over 3.3 million seniors. We have increased the GIS, helping 900,000 seniors. And we have lifted 45,000 seniors out of poverty, and we'll keep going, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, this week, as wildfires continue to burn across northwest BC, the Prime Minister is in New York at the UN, where he's being called out for allowing the massive expansion of fossil fuels. Meanwhile, we have the CEOs of Canada's richest oil and gas companies telling us they're going to double down on what they do best, profiting and polluting. The minister promised the rules for a hard cap on oil and gas emissions would be out months ago. The clock is ticking. Our children are watching. Where is the emissions cap?
Here, 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 here.
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would start by saying that Canada has developed and has been acknowledged by our international partners as having one of the most detailed and ambitious climate plans in the world. But we are doing that in a manner that will also promote economic prosperity as we move through the economic transition. We have brought into place measures relating to the oil and gas sector, including methane reductions and putting a price on carbon pollution. We have indicated we will be moving forward with 75% methane reductions by 2030 and with a cap on oil and gas emissions, and we will certainly be moving through that process as we continue the consultations both with the sector and with other stakeholders.
The Honourable Member for Port Moody Coquitlam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government has turned its back on persons with disabilities who have endured a summer of skyrocketing housing prices, declining access to health care, and increasing food prices. Canadians with disabilities are already twice as likely to live below the poverty line, and the Liberals have not provided them adequate support. This has left Canadians with disabilities unable to pay their bills. These are not luxury items, Mr. Speaker. These are basic needs. Will this government finally create the Disability Emergency Relief Fund that the community has been calling for?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister.
Passing of Bill C-22 was a major milestone in our strong and unwavering commitment to creating a more inclusive and barrier-free Canada. Mr. Speaker, it is because of the relentless advocacy of the disability community. The benefit is yet another concrete step to significantly reduce poverty and support Canadians who need it the most. Mr. Speaker, in the true spirit of nothing without us, we will continue to engage with Canadians and persons with disabilities on the design and delivery of the benefit. Mr. Speaker, we're going to get it right, and we're going to make sure the disability community feels that they're going to make sure they're part of this engagement process. Thank you. Good answer.
Honourable Member for Kings Hants.
Speaker, this week, this House debated C-49, an act to amend the Atlantic Accords, which is crucial legislation to drive Atlantic Canada's clean energy future. It is supported by the governments of Newfoundland and Labrador, the government of Nova Scotia, the clean energy industry, Indigenous communities, business stakeholders throughout the region. But yet there is only one party in this House that has signaled their intent to be against it. It is the Conservative Party. Can the minister shed some light on his conversation with progressive Conservative Premier Tim Houston and Liberal Premier in St. John's Andrew Furey on their perspective of the importance of this crucial bill?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank our colleague from Kings Hants for raising this important issue and for his leadership on energy issues in Atlantic Canada. This legislation is supported by both the Premiers of Newfoundland and Labrador and the Premier of Nova Scotia because it makes economic and energy sense for Atlantic Canada. By not supporting this law, the Conservatives are standing in the way of good jobs for Atlantic Canadians, investment in our communities, and more importantly, action on climate change. On that last part, Mr. Speaker, we're not surprised at all.
The Honourable Member for Kamloops, Thompson, Caribou.
Speaker, there are only 736 dangerous offenders currently in custody or were in custody in 2022. These are the worst of the worst offenders. People like Paul Bernardo, pedophiles, repeat rapists, the most violent of records get this designation. In Canada, federal penitentiaries with minimum security designations generally don't have fences. People can just walk away. And yet, 57 of these dangerous offenders, the worst of the worst, were in minimum security last year. What will this minister do to rectify the situation so dangerous offenders can't just walk away?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I think it's important when we're discussing issues as important as public safety, not to put in the minds of Canadians that dangerous offenders simply walk away from federal penitentiaries. My colleague on the other side knows that's not the case, Mr. Speaker. These are amongst the most serious offenses in our federal correctional system, And this government will do everything necessary to ensure the safety of Canadians and to ensure that these dangerous offenders serve their prison sentences in the appropriate security institutions.
The honourable member for Kamloops, Thompson Caribou.
Tell that to the hundreds of victims of those 57 dangerous offenders in minimum security, Mr. Speaker, especially at a time when violent and sexual crimes against children are up 126%. This government is asleep at the switch when it comes to housing, asleep at the switch when it comes to inflation, asleep at the switch when it comes to crime, and now they're asleep at the switch when it comes to public safety and jails. This government may not be worth the cost financially. They're not worth the cost when it comes to your public safety after 8 years. When will this government wake up, or will they just stay asleep at the switch?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, just because our colleague on the other side repeats the same silly phrase doesn't make it true. Mr. Speaker, our government has never been asleep when it comes to community safety, when it comes to investing in police services, in border security, undoing some of the cuts of the Harper government to our border services, particularly to keep guns and drugs out of Canadian streets. Mr. Speaker, our government is committed to doing everything necessary for the safety of Canadians, including having a robust and strong correctional system.
It's starting to get noisy again, and I just want to, I don't want to have to name individuals, and I'm sure individuals don't want to be named. So, and I'm sure that the honourable member for Kildonan St. Paul is going to want to hear the answer to her question. The honourable member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Mr. Speaker, in May, serial rapist and murderer of young girls Paul Bernardo was transferred from maximum security to medium security prison, and Canadians were reasonably outraged by this. But after 2 whole months on the job, the new public safety minister has failed to move Bernardo back to maximum security prison where he belongs, Mr. Speaker. Worse, new data tells us that hundreds of dangerous offenders, the worst, most violent criminals in the country, are in medium and even minimum security prisons. The minister has the authority to move Bernardo and others like him to maximum security. Why hasn't he done so, Mr. Speaker?
Good question. The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, again, just because our friend on the other side continually asserts something doesn't make it real. Mr. Speaker, my responsibility is to ensure that the Correctional Service, by law and according to regulations, treats the most serious offenders in our prison system with the appropriate level of security. The decision to transfer inmates from one correctional institution to another is in the hands of the appropriate officials at the Correctional Service of Canada, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, our government will continue to do everything necessary to hold these dangerous offenders to account.
The honourable member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Mr. Speaker, the minister does not get to escape his responsibility to Canadians. It is his duty to ensure the most vile killers don't get an easy ride and that their victims get justice in this country, Mr. Speaker. Subsection 6 of the Corrections and Conditional Release Act allows the minister to legally issue directives regarding dangerous offenders like Paul Bernardo. So to be clear, the minister has the power to move him back to maximum security prison today, Mr. Speaker. And yet he is choosing not to. Why?
Make the call. The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what our government is choosing to do is to invest in all of the necessary instruments to ensure that our communities remain safe. We're investing in the Correctional Service of Canada precisely to ensure that these most dangerous criminals serve their time in the appropriate facilities. We're investing in border services, something the Conservatives gutted, to keep illegal guns and drugs from entering our country. Mr. Speaker, our government will continue to support victims, but will continue to ensure we have a robust criminal justice system that treats everybody with the appropriate security.
The honourable member for Beauport-Limoilou. Mr. Speaker, in August, there were photos that were making the rounds of social media in Quebec. These weren't holiday photos or happy family get-togethers, but of the pathetic state of the Quebec City Bridge. Since 2015, Liberals have been promising to fix the bridge. but the only thing that's progressed is rust. A year ago, Mayor Bruno Marchand said it's time to stop fooling around. Mr. Speaker, can the minister tell us when will they stop fooling around? The Honourable Transport Minister. Mr. Speaker, this bridge is essential for the city of Quebec. It plays a very important role. We've been discussing with the government of Quebec, and Mr. Speaker, we're going to get this done. We're going to do it. The honourable member. Mr. Speaker, I will quote again the Mayor of Quebec City. We're still negotiating to find out who owns the structure and who will maintain it. This is sad and discouraging. Mr. Speaker, the entire region is discouraged after 8 years of broken Liberal promises. But here we have the new Minister of Transport, who's also the Quebec lieutenant. He's talking on behalf of all federal Liberals. He must not abandon Quebec the way his predecessors did. When will he have results to announce? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, it's not because the Bloc Québécois is discouraged. This doesn't mean necessarily that the people of Quebec City are discouraged. They're more resilient than the Bloc Québécois. We are in discussions and negotiations with the Quebec government. I had a meeting last week with Mayor Marchand, who's talking about progress on the file.
Number 4, Mission Matsky, Fraser Canyon.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, Canadians are seeing record inflation as grocery prices skyrocket thanks to the carbon tax. Tiff Macklem, the Bank of Canada governor, agrees that Trudeau's tax on gas and groceries increases inflation. In the case of onions, the cost is up 69%, so you don't have to wonder why food bank usage at the University of Ottawa is up over 258%. This Prime Minister is simply not worth the cost. So the question is this: will the Prime Minister eliminate the carbon tax so students can afford to eat?
Before going over, I'm sure everyone's aware, but I'll remind everyone that when we're referring to someone in the chamber, we refer to them by their riding or by their position and not by their name. Just a small reminder, I know we've been gone for the summer, but just bringing it back to you again so that next time it won't happen. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A serious and responsible government needs to have a plan for affordability and climate change, and more we're learning the Conservatives don't have a plan for either. This summer, while Liberals were in their riding meeting with their constituents, a couple of the Conservatives, like the member from Cumberland Colchester, New Brunswick Southwest, and Northumberland Peterborough South, were enjoying Chateaubriand and Porterhouse steaks on behalf of billionaire climate change denying lobbyists. Mr. Speaker, while we're spending time in our ridings getting to know the issues that affect them most, our climate action incentive sends more money back to 80% of all households. The Conservatives don't have anything to say about climate change.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. The Journal de Montréal reports today that Quebecers have been hardest hit by inflation thanks to the Liberal Bloquiste coalition. It's harder and harder to put bread on the table with this increase of 36% for butter, breakfast cereals 32% more, and red meat 30% more. The Liberals are slapping taxes on everything. That's why plates don't have as much food on them. Will the Prime Minister and his Bloquiste partners abandon their idea of slapping a second carbon tax on Quebecers? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, it's surprising to hear our colleague talk like this because there is legislation which will change the Competition Act. There will be more competition. There will be, therefore, lower prices. It's so upsetting to hear these questions rather than informing people at home that the Liberal government has brought in a historic piece of legislation to help them. The Honourable Member. I will inform Canadians and Quebecers of another troubling revelation. In the Quebec City region, well, that's where inflation is going up the fastest. And it's the carbon tax. Sometimes people need 2 cars for their jobs. So gas, everything else, these people, the Liberal Brookies Coalition, are responsible for these increases. Will the Prime Minister reject this ask of the Bloc to increase the carbon tax? Yes or no? The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the Honourable Member may not know that a price on pollution in Quebec is something that was brought in by the government of Quebec. We need a plan to fight climate change. This is extremely important for our children and our grandchildren. We also need a plan for an economy that will increase in strength in the future, in our low-carbon future. The Honourable Member for Dorval-Lachine-LaSalle. Mr. Speaker, over the summer, many residents in my riding of Dorval-Lachine-LaSalle shared their concerns with respect to the rising cost of living. And Mr. Speaker, I share their concerns. The Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, could he please inform the House of measures taken by our government to make the cost of living less and make life more affordable? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable colleague for her question and for her hard work in her riding. We know that these things we want to make these things more affordable. Today, we tabled a historic bill to deal with inflation, to deal with affordability. We reformed the competition legislation, which hasn't been changed in over a decade. We're going to increase competition. We're going to put an end to some competition-destroying mergers. And we are going to deal with this issue.
The NDP Liberal carbon tax is driving up the cost of food. University student Walt McDonald must choose between eating his food bank meal for breakfast or lunch. The Dalhousie Student Union Food Bank says 10 years ago they just served extra snacks to students. Now students are using it for their weekly meal plan. After 8 years, the Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. Right. Will the Prime Minister stop forcing students to food banks and axe his inflationary carbon tax? Here, here. Yes or no?
Here, here. Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, and indeed, this past year, from September of 2022 to 2023, it's been a tough time in Nova Scotia. We've had 3 natural disasters. We have had floods, we've had hurricanes, we've had fires. That's impacted us financially with $3 billion worth of costs. It's impacted lives, and it's cost lives, Mr. Speaker. We have a plan to address that. But what I hear in this chamber time and time again when it comes to the opposition, and the opposition leader who's also been here a year, when it comes to the environment, when it comes to jobs in Atlantic Canada that are renewable jobs that are going to be coming to us because of the Atlantic Accord, grifting, gaslighting, and generally goofiness.
The Honourable Member for Caribou Prince George.
What an out-of-touch answer, Mr. Speaker. After 8 long years of this Prime Minister's tax and spend inflationary policies, Canadians are recognizing he's just not worth the cost. His carbon tax is raising the cost of everything. He doesn't understand that if you tax the farmer that grows the food, tax the trucker that ships the food, ultimately it's Canadians that pay that price. Potatoes, onions, canned soup, all up over 70%. Will the Prime Minister finally listen to Canadians and axe his tax so they can afford to eat?
Well done. The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
First of all, I would say we are very cognizant of the need to address affordability issues. That's why 8 out of 10 Canadian families actually get a rebate that is more than they pay, and it also is part of a climate plan. I would say it is appalling in my view that the member opposite and his party have no plan to address the climate issue. Given what we saw in northern BC in terms of forest fires this summer, it's a shame that they have not addressed the climate issue. It is a shame for our children and for our grandchildren and for the future of this planet.
There you go.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to tell the new little guy from Shawinigan that yesterday morning in Quebec City, we saw that that's a city where inflation is hitting hardest. The carbon tax is one of the causes of all this. And the Bloc Québécois is responsible. The Liberal tax is hurting Quebecers. And worse, the Bloc wants this government to increase this tax dramatically. And this will cost dramatically more. Will the Prime Minister reject the Bloc's ask to increase the tax? Mr. Speaker, you know, we're behind on our climate change plan. It seems that the Bloc is not interested. The cost of climate change, with the impact of the storms, the fires, this makes pollution expensive, and to not deal with this would be a great mistake, especially for future generations.
Speaker, we know that families are struggling with the high cost of living, but that the Canada-wide early learning and childcare system is helping them cope. In my riding of Newmarket Aurora, over 3,200 children are enrolled on this program, and I know that it is having a huge positive difference for their families. Can the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development tell this House what are her next steps in implementing this plan?
Minister for Families.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague is right. Many families are struggling right now, and we know how important childcare is to families. That's exactly why we are building a nationwide system. In Newmarket, Aurora, and across Ontario, families are feeling the 50% reduction in costs already, saving literally hundreds of dollars each month. What's next, my colleague asks? We've already created or announced 50,000 new spaces. We have 200,000 more spaces to go.
The Honourable Member for Nanaimo, Ladysmith.
Mr. Speaker, natural health products need to be safe, effective, and properly labeled. Over 80% of Canadians rely on these products as an important part of their daily regimen. Yet, people are worried about the new Health Canada changes. They are concerned that health products will be more expensive, less available, with serious impacts on small business. Will the Liberals assure people that natural health products will be available, affordable, and appropriately regulated?
Hear, hear.
Minister of Health.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And of course, it is extraordinarily important that Canadians know that the natural health products that they take are safe. It's very disturbing that more than 700 cases last year were instances where there was a serious health impact as a result of taking a natural health product and having an adverse health impact, including hospitalization. So making sure that it is safe for Canadians and at the same time ensuring that there is a fair program for small and medium-sized businesses to ensure that they are not adversely infected is what we're focused on, Mr. Speaker.
I'm afraid that's all the time we have for question period today. We'll come to some points of order after, following a discussion among representatives of all parties. I understand that there's an agreement to observe a moment of silence in memory of the 4 wildland firefighters who lost their lives near Wallachin, British Columbia. J'invite les honorables députés de se lever.
I would ask honourable members to rise.